This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
He is Ira Winderman. No glasses. See, he's Draw McGraw now, so he's definitely on target. I can see that you've got the timing just right, my brother.
I can see clearly now. So I guess eventually the rain must fall if they're hitting 3-pointers. We shall see.
No doubt about that. All right, Heat Camp. Talk to us a little bit about what you're expecting early on from Heat Camp.
You know, it's interesting, because I'm working on a story for next week about whether there will be any battles in training camp. And you know how it is with Coach Flores and Coach Diaz. They always try to create battles because when you have competition, there's a heightened sense of urgency. I don't see that in this Heat camp. I think, you and I would both be very surprised if the opening night starting lineup is not Bam Adebayo, PJ Tucker, Duncan Robinson, Jimmy Butler, and Kyle Lowry. I would take it a step further. I think you and I both would also be very surprised if the first three reserves off the bench aren't Dwayne Dedmon at center, Markieff Morris at forward, Tyler Hero at guard. So I think I've sort of given you 8 deep. So the battles in camp might be whether a Max Strus can be a rotation player, whether Gabe Vincent will be loose again, whether Gabe Vincent will be the de facto backup point guard, whether Omar Yurtseven might actually get some quality minutes. A player I wrote about today just posted at sunsentinel.com, whether Caleb Martin with 2 full years in the NBA might become a factor with his outside shooting. There will be subtle battles. But this is a team that pretty much scripted its season by the way it approached its offseason. So I think it'll be a controversy-free camp. I think it'll be camp of easing into stuff. And the overriding question in camp, in the preseason, and during the regular season will be this. How do you navigate a roster that has a 36-year-old player in PJ Tucker, a 35-year-old player in Kyle Lowry, 30-something players in Jimmy Butler and Markieff Morris, that balance, that you coming on every time here on the Acura Pembroke Pines reports on Tuesday and Fridays, mostly during the season, and you're going to be, Ira, big game tonight. I'm going to go, well, yeah, unless they rest half the guys. I think that's going to be interesting. And as happened when I was talking with Clay Ferraro the other day on our Pallet Rock City Inside the Paint show, Eric Spoelstra is going to say everything about competition, that, he's going to make that available. I just don't see that. Maybe I am wrong. Maybe there's more to this than appears at the moment. But right now, I think this is a very well-ordered Miami Heat training camp.
Yeah, but I've given you that answer that you're asking, and that's the young guys need to be the engine during the season. I've mentioned this to you before. Bam needs to come through. Tyler needs to come through. Duncan needs to come through. And I would like to see a bonus like the Strus is on the loose or somebody to really help out throughout the year. Don't make the older guys carry the burden. Plus, at the same time, Ira, this also makes us feel better about Tyler and Duncan as we get to the real important part of the season that, hey, man, they've been stepping up throughout the regular season. They've been carrying and helping out and carrying the scoring load. Now, when the playoffs start, of course, the veterans are going to pick it up. But now we know the young guys are ready to truly commit in the most important part of the year. And I think that's kind of when you were talking about this preseason and early on in the season, it's kind of a catch-22. It's kind of, okay, chemistry, because you want everybody new to kind of get to know each other and play well. But on the same time, you want to keep developing these young guys because you need them to be effective to help, keep these older guys, not just fresh this year, but you have them for several years. So it would be really nice.
Except irascible talk show host Orlando Alzugaray of the Big O Show, my question is this. What are you therefore willing to settle for? In other words, will you honestly, when you and I are talking here, February, March, especially into April, and see the Heat might not have home court advantage in the first round, you're going to go to me, hey, Ira, if Jimmy and Kyle and PJ are all healthy and rested, I can deal with it. Or you're going to go to me, holy crap, they have to play as the road team in Boston the first round or Atlanta. The road team in Brooklyn or Milwaukee the second round. The road team in Milwaukee or Brooklyn the third round. So that all sounds well and good. And right now you're most calm and relaxed, maybe not your most tan, but you'll get outside a little bit more from the cave there. And you're feeling good about what this team might be. But you know what? Seeding does matter, Big O. And we've seen that before. And they got that craptastic number 6 seed last season, and they were swept by the Bucks because we knew the Bucks were the better team going into that series. So I think there has to be a balance. Now, maybe you're right. Maybe Tyler Hero lifts his game. Maybe Duncan Robinson gets back to where he was 2 seasons ago with his 3-point shooting percentage, and maybe a Max Strus or Omar Yurtseven step forward. But I still think you have to think about top 4. It was too hard of a path last season. So you put me home court in the first round against Atlanta, against Boston, against the Knicks. I'm fine with that. You're home court. You have actual fans, hopefully return to normalcy. But you set them up on that 3-round road course. That's tough for a lot of teams to overcome. I think the Lakers with Anthony Davis and LeBron James and Russell Westbrook might be able to. I'm not sure I can put the Heat's big 3 in the same playoff class right now, and I think that's where the concern will be. Again, the bubble was wonderful, but there were no road teams. They played as the road team in the first round against Indiana, except there was no road. They played in the road team the second round against Milwaukee, no road. Same thing against Boston in the third round. This is a little more reality. It's going to be a really interesting balance with Eric Spoelstra.
Caleb Martin, what do they see in him? What do you hear? Because, the one thing about the Heat, I don't care who they grab. I'm always intrigued because they might get more out of somebody than other teams do. And that's been a tendency under this regime for many, many years. They have a way of finding a guy and getting more out of him than anyone else does, right? So what's the deal with Caleb Martin? What do they see him as?
This is interesting because the Heat have a way of finding guys during training camp we didn't know about. And I go especially back 2 seasons ago. I mentioned this in my story at sunsentinel.com. Kendrick Nunn was nobody. No offense to Kendrick Nunn. God bless him. He did a nice job at Oakland University after he transferred out of Illinois, but he was unknown. And then circumstance was there. Dion Waiters turned into Dion Waiters, became troublesome, became a player that Eric Spoelstra simply didn't want to deal with, and in fact suspended for opening night. So the final preseason game, you remember, against Houston, a huge showdown, and the only player better than Kendrick Nunn on that night on the court was some guy named James Harden. All of a sudden, we know he took off from there. Now the opportunity's there again with Victor Oladipo assuredly out for the start of the season, certainly the preseason and weeks into the regular season. Caleb Martin is a player. I spoke to a Western Conference scout earlier this week, and he put it this way. He goes to me, he is an NBA roster player. Now, that might not sound like a lot to you, but if your two-way player is viewed as a roster player, then you've gotten value on that contract. So I think he's going to go in, and I asked the scout, I said, do me a favor, let's do some comparisons. I know that Jimmy and Duncan and Kyle are going to be your starting wing players. I know that the fourth guard is going to be Tyler Hero. And I asked him, is Caleb Martin better than Max Strus? He goes, no, I pretty much put him as equivalencies. Strus better shooter, Martin a little better defender. And I asked him, is Caleb Martin better than Gabe Vincent? And he said, yeah, I'd have to say right now I think he is. So what I'm saying is, when you ask me the first question today here on the Acura Pembroke Pines Report, as far as who do I think is going to have a chance to make a statement in camp, I think that'll be interesting. Because again, this is my concern. And I know Caleb Martin's not a point guard, but he is a wing player. Kyle Lowry at 35 misses some time. Kyle Lowry, we hope so, but maybe tests for COVID or something and misses some time. So I'm going to throw this at you now, so I hope you have your ThinkPad open there. Okay, so Kyle Lowry is not starting today. He's out tonight. Eric Spoelstra announces it a shoot-around.
Okay.
Who do you think steps in the lineup? Do you think it's as simple as Gabe Vincent is your starting point guard? Or do you think Eric Spoelstra says, you know what, I want my best players on the court. Maybe you have Bam handle tonight. Maybe you have Jimmy Butler handle tonight and start someone else. So right now, if Kyle Lowry can't start, I'm not saying this, folks, but if he can't start the opener or is not going to play a back-to-back early in the season, who do you think emerges as that fifth starter?
Tyler Hero. He handled the ball a little bit, and now It's Tyler Hero who's coming off a good preseason, looking in shape. Okay, hey, we've used him a little bit at point guard. It's not ideal, but maybe we don't want to put Gabe Vincent in that position right now. Tyler is a player for us, our first-round pick, and a scorer that we can count on in many different ways, where Gabe's a good shooter overall. Maybe you go in that direction.
You know what? And I'm going to be Ira the contrarian here because that's what you pay me the marginal bucks to do. So, and when I look at it, the one thing is, remember a year ago they tried Tyler at point guard, and it was too much for him, and they gave him a chance at starter along the way. The one thing Eric Spoelstra has shown is he tries to find a niche for a player of comfortability. And I think as a streak scoring sixth man in the Lou Williams mode, the Jamal Crawford mode, I think that is Tyler Hero's inevitable place. So I'm not sure you want to mess around with that. You want to tell him, okay, for 6 preseason games, you're going to play as our sixth man, just spark our offense. That's your special role. And then tell him on opening night or when Kyle Lowry misses time, but instead now do X and Y instead of A and B. That's why I think guys like maybe a Strus, maybe a Caleb Martin might have a chance. I don't want to, and this is a good segue, I don't want to mess with Tyler Hero. I want Tyler Hero to feel comfortable. Oh, I don't think he did at the start of last season when he was playing as a point guard. You know, when maybe he was starting with different players and having to defer a little more to the Bams and to the Butlers. So that's why I think it'll be interesting when you're talking about possible camp issues. That could be one of them. Again, I like the starting 5. I'm comfortable with the next 3 we just spoke about of Dedmon, Markieff Morris, and Tyler Hero. But I got a lot of questions about a 9th man. A 9th man will not matter in the playoffs. A 9th man will not matter in the postseason when there's no back-to-backs. But there are back-to-backs during the regular season. It does get grueling. There are too many games. So I need to know after those first 8, who's my next man up? Is it Yurtseven? Is it Max Strus? Is it Caleb Martin? And a name I haven't even mentioned. I'm going to put you on the spot here again, because you know what? You put me on the spot all the time. What player haven't I mentioned that I should mention? I know it's not fair. I don't like when people blindside me either. So I'll give you the name, and you'll give me one of those, big O looks. KZ Okpala.
Oh, God.
I can't even trust him enough that when I'm – first of all, did you just eat something sour there?
Yeah.
For those not watching on YouTube. So the point
I thought you were giving me something that I can use, like KZ.
So the point I'm trying to make is, but we all think a player in his 3rd year should be in that group, right? A player in his 3rd year should be a group. Now, when I'm asking you, Big O, Orlando Alzugaray, who should at least be an 11th man, we didn't even get around to that. That's a subject of disappointment. The scout I spoke to earlier in the week told me, goes, I'm not even sure he's an NBA player anymore. That's disappointing. That's frustrating because that's a guy Eric Spoelstra did trust at certain times to play as a spot starter.
Yeah, and listen, everybody makes mistakes, and you know they've done such a great job of finding and developing the unknown. You're not going to hit on all of them, and you know maybe KZ might be one you missed out on. Now, you brought something up in one of your articles, and this is going to come a little bit from ignorance because I'm not exactly sure, but you mentioned Goran Dragic in one of your Ask Iras, I believe it was, and I read it in. And they can't trade for him this year.
No, you cannot bring him back by trade for a year. There was too much manipulation with players like Gary Payton and Antoine Walker over the years. So you cannot trade for him. If he's cut from a team other than the Raptors, then you might be able to sign him.
Oh, so even if he's cut from the Raptors, they can't pick him up?
No, not directly. Not from the team you traded him to. So in other words, if Goran Dragic gets a buyout, let's say from the Raptors, is signed by the Mavericks, the Knicks, and it doesn't work out, then you're no longer attached as the second team. So you can, that's a long shot. Because like I wrote in Ask Ira at sunsentinel.com, Goran Dragic is a really good player. And Goran Dragic will help a playoff team. The problem is the Heat needed to use his $19.4 million to balance the Kyle Lowry trade. Oh, I thoroughly agree. If they could have put anyone else, Andre Iguodala or someone else in that deal, he would have been the perfect backup point guard for this roster.
Now, I think they still will cut him because he does have an injury history. They're paying him a lot of money. There could be a buyout in the end if he wants to get the hell out. Plus, they got my boy Malachi Flynn, who If I'm them, I want to play Fred VanVleet and Malachi because
Yeah.
Malachi showed you a lot
No,
last
no,
year.
Flynn and Van Vliet are there. They have a young core. I get all that.
Yeah,
But you know what?
so
It's to no advantage to buy him out now if there's still a market. I believe Dallas not only wants him, I believe Dallas needs him. And Dallas has enough intriguing young pieces. They're sort of playing liar's poker right now. Dallas is offering Dwight Powell, and they're going, yeah, how about Jalen Brunson? Or how about Green? Or how about one of your young kids? And they're going to go back and forth. Right now, as of this taping right now, on the Acura Pembroke Pines Miami Heat Insider Report, Goran still doesn't even have a number yet because they don't want to get into the whole should they give him number 7 or not until they have to decide when their camp opens Tuesday whether that's even a necessity. So, yeah, he's still in flux. The thought is sooner rather than later, he'll wind up on another team.
okay. All right. So then if he does
Just
get
not the
injured,
Heat.
if he does get injured, like you kind of expect, then maybe they cut him, and then Miami ends up with him, and he ends up backing up, Kyle Lowry.
It would be perfect.
I know
Absolutely.
that's
Yes.
kind of what I was thinking of. That if he can get cut, and because of his injury history, I could see people saying, yeah, let's just buy him out because it's a lot of money and all that kind of stuff. And then maybe he makes his way back to Miami, which would be really, really nice. All right, Ira, what are you working on in the Sun Sentinel so Heat fans can check you out and get ready for the upcoming season?
Well, with all I just told you about, there's no questions in the rotation. I think there are 10 major questions for the Heat coming up. We're doing one of ours. I know you see Omar does this also at the Sun Sentinel and sunsentinel.com. 10 Heat questions leading into camp and sort of what the hot button issues are, from whether Jimmy Butler can turn it around from last season's playoff promise that went sour, whether Kyle Lowry is enough, whether Bam Adebayo can expand his game, Duncan Robinson get back to the three-point shooting of 2 years ago, whether He-Man Hero really can keep that musculature during the regular season, whether the topic you and I have spoken about for weeks, the Heat finally capitulate and get into the tax and say, you know what, we'll get a 15th player. Let's make a real run for this. So there's a lot of questions. And the old, Ira Winderman always asks 2 questions. Will they get a backup point guard? That's just to tick off Pat Riley. And will Eric Spoelstra go big like Clay Ferraro and I were talking about on our Wednesday show? Will he go with the 2 big man lineup, free Bam Adebayo, let him play more power forward? There are questions. There are legitimate questions. We know the roster. We know the rotation. Now we'll find out how it's all utilized.
And will the Nets move their home games in the playoffs so Kyrie can play in those
Isn't that
home games?
insane? Isn't that insane? I don't know if you touched it earlier in the show, but I
No,
understand you could be vaccine reluctant. You could look back to some of the horrible things our country did to segments of the population in testing vaccines and in testing LSD for our military. But now it's such a different time. And you know what? You're right, Big O. You've spoken about this a lot of times. You don't have to be a professional athlete. You don't have to play sports. Cole Beasley can go out and do whatever else he wants, unvaccinated, in so many other lines of work. Same thing for Kyrie Irving. But I think you have to understand your workplace. You have to understand how fortunate you are. You mentioned on the show there are parts of Kyrie that endlessly frustrate you. But you've also been fair and mentioned things, the charitable work he's done, the work he's done in race relations, the work he's done overseas, creating clean water. There's a lot of good in that man also. I think he could be a good person if he doesn't play in the NBA. But you know what? In this calendar season, in 21-22, if you want to be a good teammate and an NBA player, there's certain concessions you have to make. If you don't want to be an NBA player or an NFL player or any other sport, you could go on and still live your best life, just a different best life.
So what the hell happens with Kyrie and Wiggins then?
I think the pressure continues from their teammates. The pressure continues from someone like a Kevin Durant. Whoa, buddy, I came here to play with you. Get on the damn court. Do what's necessary. Blake Griffin, I took a huge buyout to come here and play for you. Get your butt on the court. James Harden, I forced a trade and was made to look really ugly in a situation to play with you. LaMarcus Aldridge, I'm coming back from a potential heart disease because I want to play with you. If that's not enough, then all the internal issues that you've been mentioning as possibilities for weeks might start surfacing there because of his flighty sort of personality. You know what? People are saying, fine, go to a place they don't have that mandate. Trade him for Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons will fit in fine with the Nets. Kyrie might or might not, just like might or might not in Cleveland and Boston, and now in Brooklyn, fit in with the 76ers. There are possibilities. Big O, it shouldn't have to come to that. I can understand someone wanting to get all the facts. I can understand a pro athlete whose body is his temple, careful about any single element, whether it's injected or vaccinated into them. But at some point you have to, I don't want to say go with the flow, but you have to understand this is also what you signed up for. You're part of a union. It's collectively bargained. You're part of a state that has rules and a government. At some point, you have to fit in somewhere. You have to agree with it. Like you said, when we were working together at the other station, you had a mask mandate and you made it clear to everyone. Wear a mask, do a show. Wear a mask, don't do a show. Don't get paid. But that's what happens. Your employer comes out with rules. You follow them.
Yeah, that is a wacky story. Follow him on Twitter at Ira Heatbeat and catch him 3 times a week here, twice, Tuesdays and Fridays with the Acura Pembroke Pines Miami Heat Report, and on Wednesdays, the best hardcore hour of basketball, Heat and NBA talk with the Pallet Rack City Inside the Paint show, now 9 a.m. till 10 a.m. Eastern every Wednesday here on the program. Ira, thank you, sir. Have a fantastic weekend.
And as always, I'm just trying to be your Caleb Martin. Thank you, Big O.
This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.